I'm Lester Holt, and this is Dateline. Gossip can rip through a small town in minutes, ruining reputations as it goes. But sometimes it can also lead to the truth.
I could see the victim lying in...
stating he was just a kind soul.
Did he have any enemies?
I really don't know.
The elders of the church said that they had seen them in the car together.
We had some complaints that people were having sex in the parking deck.
She told me that none of it was true.
That was the red flag moment for you, that Cindy didn't stay and eat her fries. As bizarre as it sounds, yes.
Why?
Who do you feel like you're looking in the eyes?
A cold-blooded killer.
Here's Andrea Canning with Even the Devil Went to Church.
Outnumber streetlights. Faith is a way of life.
I grew up in the church. Everyone that I knew went to church.
Sunday sermons, Wednesday services, church picnics.
Faith is a huge part and always has been a huge part of Southern life.
It's how the people of Morris, a small town outside of Birmingham, come together to celebrate Lent.
Into every bit of Southern society.
So when salacious rumors involving a church started swirling, the God-fearing folks who live here hoped the whispers weren't true. But they had to wonder.
Even the devil went to church.
And on a cold February night in 2015, the truth began to emerge.
Police department door, and I don't know if the house has been broke into or what. The table's been knocked over.
Okay, let's back up just a little bit.
My husband.
Okay, who are you?
Cindy Henderson Reese.
Cindy Reese?
Uh-huh.
She said she couldn't find her husband, who was supposed to be home. Police arrived quickly, very quickly. The station was right across the street, small of their own.
We've been called for assistance by Morris Police Department.
Sergeant Detective Bryan Street was on call that night for the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department.
You arrive on the scene. What do you see?
Morris had the whole scene taped off with crime scene tape. I walk in the front door, and there's a table turned over right inside the back door area through the hallway.
A victim? Yes, a man, shot to death. It was clear to the detective he had a murder on his hands.
Are there many murders like this in Morris?
No. It's very rare. Morris is a small town.
This must have been a big deal.
For Morris, yes, it was.
So who are you told is the victim?
Michael Reese.
Own home. The only potential witness was his wife, Cindy Reese, who had called 911. She was outside being cared for by police officers, while Detective Street took in the crime scene.
I needed to see what the scene looked like and wanted to see where the body was, what the position was, anything that I could tell right away.
Where was the body?
There was a new construction area. His feet were right at the back door, and he was leaned forward into the unfinished room.
Michael had been shot once in the back of the head.
Does that say anything to you when someone is shot from behind like that, in the head?
Well, it gives us an indication that somebody did this to him, not that it was self-inflicted.
Was the house telling you anything?
When we walked in the house, it was consistent. There were things turned over.
Did it look like a burglary?
Yes, ma'am.
Whatever happened, it was soon after Michael got home. Investigators noted that his dinner, a burger and fries from a popular fast food joint, sat untouched on a table. Detective Street had to wonder if Michael had surprised a burglar and paid for it with his life. Or did someone have it out for him?
What are you being told about Michael Reese?
Officers, they knew him from living across the street, but not on a personal basis.
Michael's friends and family would fill in those gaps for the detective, and in the process lay bare secrets that would rock this small religious community. Could one of those secrets lead to Michael's killer?
When we come back, it seemed like Michael was loved by everyone.
He was just a kind soul.
But investigators wondered if his wife knew something different.
Was this about figuring out if there was anyone that they had issues with, that kind of thing?
Absolutely.
Murder was just hours old, but news of his death was already spreading.
I couldn't even really fathom what was going on.
Josh Freeman was one of Michael Reese's best friends.
He was like an uncle to my kids. You know, he was a huge part of so many people's lives, you know, such a rock to so many people. And then he was just gone. I mean, nobody had a chance before he died. You never think that that was going to be the last time that you talked to him.
Josh had known Michael since the 7th grade. He says his friend was smart, a computer whiz who worked in IT at a hospital in Birmingham.
He was that art computer nerd, as we called him.
More than that, says Josh. Michael was funny and kind, and was all
not going to be there anymore. You don't even know how to work that out.
Delane Mullins, a cousin to Michael's wife Cindy, was also reeling from the news.
It was devastating. He was just a kind soul.
Delane's heart broke for Cindy. Her husband was gone, and it was a tragedy Cindy had experienced before. She lost her first husband to suicide 8 years earlier.
She just sort of didn't have any motivation or maybe any hope that life was going to get any better anytime soon.
But all that changed in the spring of 2008. Delane and a mutual friend of Michael's thought he might be a good match for Cindy. His first marriage had ended in divorce, leaving him shattered.
My best friend said, hey, you know, he's a good Christian guy. He's very involved in the church, very family-oriented.
The two started for him.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If anybody deserved to be happy, it was Michael.
These were two people who were now coming together for a fresh start.
Yes, absolutely. They both had their bad times in their lives, so we thought that this was good.
The couple married a little over a year later with the blessing of Cindy's younger brother, Chris Henderson.
How did you feel when Cindy told you?
To have him as a brother-in-law. Everything I knew about him, every interaction I'd had with him had been great. So yeah, that was exciting.
Did Cindy seem happy again later, after everything she'd been through?
Oh, absolutely. My husband even said that he had not seen her that happy in many, many, many years.
Like many couples in this Bible Belt community, Faith was the cornerstone to join her church, Sardis Baptist, where she served as music director. He didn't hesitate.
He decided to get baptized in the Baptist church, even though he'd grown up Methodist.
I felt like that was probably going to allow he and Cindy to grow even closer, both in their marriage and as Christians.
But 5 years later, the love story between Michael and Cindy had ended in sudden and shocking violence, husband's death. Now he needed her help solving Michael's murder.
I report all of my interviews, okay, Cindy?
Detective Street and a colleague spoke with her just 5 hours after the murder.
Was this about figuring out if there was anyone, you know, that they had issues with, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. We went over what they did that day.
Cindy told the detective the day head's accountant for the county before heading to his IT job. After work, he swung by to pick her up at 5.
Where did y'all go?
When Michael picked me up, we went by my mom's house, because today was trash day.
Cindy said after helping her mother, she and Michael went to church from 6 to 7.
Where'd y'all go after that?
To eat.
Milo's is an Alabama fast food chain, known for its seasoned French fries. As soon as the couple got home with their food, Cindy said she realized they needed a few things from the grocery store.
She went inside and set the food down and hollered at Michael saying, I'm going to run to Piggly Wiggly and get some items.
And when she returned,
I just saw the bliss phone.
Right. Did you holler for Michael?
I did holler for Michael.
The detectives asked Cindy if she had any idea who could have done this.
I really don't know. Honestly.
Did he have any enemies?
Don't know. I really don't know.
There had been a contractor at the house, Cindy said, building the extension. She doubted it was him, but it was a potential lead for detectives to run down. He'd heard rumors, gossip. People had seen things. things that might reveal the motive for Michael's murder.
He was a pastor at Sardis Baptist.
Coming up, it was the kind of gossip that spreads fast, especially in a small town.
We had some complaints that people were having sex in the parking deck.
When Dateline continues.
The murder of 40-year-old Michael Reese had investigators scratching their heads. Homicides didn't happen in Morris, Alabama, especially not across the street from the police station.
I remember helping him get the Milos in.
Detectives spoke to Cindy Reese for hours,
And the stuff in the floor, I didn't walk past that.
But there was something on Detective Street's mind, something delicate that he needed to talk to Cindy about. It had to do with her and a man who wasn't her husband.
We had some complaints that people were having sex in the parking deck.
The county employee parking deck. The detective was told it was Cindy being intimate with a man in a pest control truck of all, Sergeant Ellen Shire.
Sergeant Street actually called me at home the night the homicide occurred and woke me up and said, you're never going to guess whose homicide I'm working. Michael Reese, and then told me that Cindy is the one that was in the parking deck.
The investigators soon learned the rumor had made the rounds in Morris. Cindy's cousin Delaine Mullins had heard about it from Cindy.
I mean, this is the woman who's in charge of the choir at church, who spends many days a week going to church.
Yes, and always had. Everything about her life up to that point was completely pure.
And what was even more outrageous, Delaine thought, was who Cindy was accused of being in the truck with. It was the pastor of Cindy's church, the pastor who baptized Michael.
Said that they had seen them in the car together, and they were accusing them of an affair. And I said, well, ergonomically, that's not even possible.
Like the two of them couldn't fit in the car to have a sexual act because of their size?
Yes, it didn't even make sense.
At the time, Jeff had gotten a job at a pest control company. His laughable.
Did you ask her how Michael was handling the rumors?
I did, and, she acted like that he didn't believe them either, that they were working through things.
But soon, Delaine started to hear things that made her wonder if Cindy's relationship with Pastor Jeff had crossed the line.
Does something start to feel a little off?
Well, Cindy started telling me that she had started. That's when I started thinking this really, really doesn't feel right.
But yeah, these two are just feel closer than pastor and parishioner.
Right.
Now, Cindy's husband was dead, shot in the back of the head, and Sergeant Street was looking for answers. Using a gentle touch, he asked Cindy about the most intimate details of her private life.
I'm so sorry that we sent to a stranger.
Cindy quickly admitted she and Michael had been having marital problems.
He just didn't want anything to do with me. We stopped having sex and making love to each other. He started playing on the computer more. It was like, he doesn't love me anymore. He started saying a lot. It was time for me to leave. And I just finally asked him if we could talk. And the more I opened up, the more he was seeing.
With him helping you through what you were going with at home, is that, do you think that that's how y'all became closer?
Probably.
She said their relationship started off innocently enough, but
the more we just kind of fell in love with each other.
So you did fall in love with Jeff? And he
Yeah.
Still, she was adamant the rumors about them having sex in the parking deck weren't true. But she said the elders in her church couldn't be convinced otherwise.
The more we tried to fight it, the worse it got. So I just resigned.
The detective knew there had to be more to this story.
When did y'all's relationship actually, progress to the point of physical or whatever else?
It was around the time I resigned.
Okay.
What are you thinking when she tells you this? Pretty scandalous.
Absolutely. An affair in a Southern Baptist church is bad enough, and then it's coming in the middle of a homicide makes a suspect.
And that led the detective to his next question.
Did you shoot Michael?
No, I would not be able to do that. I can't even shoot an animal when it's dying.
She admitted she was an adulterer, not a murderer. She told the detective there was no reason to kill her husband. Michael already knew about everything.
I had a lot of guilt, and I told Michael that I had an affair.
So you did?
Their marriage worked, and had even gone back to Disney World for a second honeymoon.
We just went back for our 5th anniversary. Our 5th anniversary. I ain't even got the picture yet to put in our frame.
Of the 3 people in this love triangle, Michael was dead. Cindy claimed she was innocent. That left Pastor Jeff. What would he say? Investigators were about to find out.
I'm going to come out and ask you.
Coming up, Jeff Brown seemed as shocked as anyone by the death of his rival.
Jeff, how you feel about Michael being dead?
I don't have words. I just don't have them.
And this is what mattered most. He claimed to have an alibi.
He wasn't around when this murder took place.
That's what he said.
Less than an hour after police finished interviewing Cindy Reese about the murder of her husband,
I'm going to end this interview.
they brought in Jeff Brown, the man who'd been Cindy's pastor and her not-so-secret lover.
Jeff, how you feel about Michael being dead?
I just don't have them.
But detectives had words. They considered Jeff a suspect and told him so.
You're a preacher with 2 kids. You also have an affair with a married woman, right?
You're absolutely right. Don't hate the sin. Don't hate the sinner, hate the sin.
This guy turned up dead, shot in the back of the head. And only 2 people that have motives are you and his wife. Sound like a lifetime.
He seems sort of nonchalant as you bring up the affair.
He was very defensive about the affair. He was grabbing the arms of the chair so tightly that his knuckles were white, trying not to give away any indicators of deception. Are you in love with Cindy?
I am.
Still?
Absolutely.
Do you see yourself with Cindy?
Absolutely.
Because of the affair, and he said he and his wife were getting divorced.
Did it bother you at all that you were actually following through with your divorce and Cindy was not?
It concerned me.
He also admitted it more than concerned him that Cindy and Michael were still sleeping together.
I'm not going to lie to you, it sickened me, him touching her. Because she would describe some of it to her.
Besides, he seemed to have a good alibi. He said he was 50 miles away at the time Michael was killed.
I was heading up Carson Road, and I was trying to get to my buddy's house because I wanted to go on my storage unit.
So Jeff had no problem answering Detective Street's next question.
Did you shoot Michael in the head?
No, I did not.
Okay. Do you know if Cindy shot Michael in the head?
I do not.
I had suspicions. I did not have enough probable cause for arrest.
But the investigation was just getting started. So many leads to follow, questions to answer, like who was Pastor Jeff Brown? Detectives learned this married father of 2, with 1 on the way, had an eclectic past.
Where had he come from? What kind of jobs had he done? I mean, he's driving a pest control truck.
Yeah,
He also worked as a police officer for 2 years, for a moving company, and he was a hairdresser.
so he's kind of a jack of all trades, and good at none, I guess.
As you can imagine, in tiny Morris, Alabama, Michael Reese's murder was the talk of the town. Everyone had an opinion. Jerry Vincent, the town's building inspector, certainly did. He thought Jeff was obsessed with Cindy.
Looking at Cindy's house. Was he waiting for Mike to go to work or waiting for Cindy to come out? I mean, you know, what was he doing down there?
There was even one story Cindy's cousin Delane heard about Jeff literally getting between Michael and Cindy. It happened after they moved to a new church.
What happens to Pastor Jeff?
He starts showing up at the church, and Cindy and Michael were already seated, that sometimes he would even come and sit in between them.
What?
And yeah, that's what I had heard.
The more police looked into Jeff, the more they found people who just didn't like him.
What had you heard about Jeff Brown around town?
Can you say man whore? Yeah.
It is Dateline, you know.
He was a cad.
Cindy's uncle, Roy Henderson, agreed.
The only opinion I had from the very beginning is this is a con man. He tries to worm himself into environments to make himself look better and to get what he wants.
And what he wanted was Cindy. According to her mom, Judy, Michael knew all about it.
Hey, advice do you give to your son-in-law?
Well, I said, Michael, are you sure? And he said yes. And he said, I am afraid of Jeff. And I said, you think Jeff might hurt you? And he said, yeah, I know he would if he got the opportunity.
Her son-in-law may have been right. Detectives were surprised to learn that about a month before the murder, Jeff allegedly asked two of his
his car and some possible money after the deed was done.
The men reported Jeff to a different police department, not the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. That's why the detective was only hearing about it now.
This is a nice gift to your investigation.
Absolutely.
Things weren't looking good for Pastor Jeff, but he did have that one thing working in his favor.
He wasn't around when this
on his cell phone records, hoping to prove or disprove his alibi. Meantime, they turned their attention back to Cindy. There was something they needed to clear up.
One of the clues I know that really stuck out to you involved food.
Correct. As bizarre as it sounds, yes.
Coming up, was Jeff Brown a kept man?
There was that she had rented for him, the car note.
She's paying for everything.
She's paying for everything.
When Dateline continues.
A week into the murder investigation of Michael Reese, detectives had questions for his wife Cindy. Call when she said she couldn't find her husband.
Stuff has been kind of dumped around in the house, and I can't find my husband.
What was strange to me is as soon as I walked in the house, I could see the victim lying in the back door, which was standing wide open. It would have been hard for her to be looking for her husband and not have seen him laying there.
And her description of a past weren't so sure.
Was the burglary theory making some sense?
Well, the first thing that I noticed was there was no forced entry into the residence.
And as for the construction worker who had access to the house, he had a solid alibi.
His alibi was that he was actually in church, and we were able to verify that.
Police were becoming more suspicious of Cindy. They even wondered about it.
We did reopen that case and look at it, but we could not find anything to validate that she was responsible.
But their list of clues in this case was growing, including a highly unusual one.
Well, here in Alabama, there's Milo's Hamburgers, and they have absolutely some of the best French fries, I'd have to say, in the world.
And everyone. So police were puzzled when Cindy said on the night of her husband's murder, she dropped off the bag filled with burgers and fries and told Michael she was off to buy groceries at the Piggly Wiggly.
Before or after you ate?
We had to eat.
That was the red flag moment for you, that Cindy didn't stay and eat her fries.
That's as bizarre as it sounds, yes.
And not only that, Cindy said she raced off without eating because she needed
full lunch meat and orange juice inside the fridge, and there was really no need to go to the store immediately.
And what happened next also made detectives' ears perk up. She told them as she was headed to the grocery store, her phone rang.
Jeff called and said that he left his wallet at home, and he needed some gas. So I met him at the gas station. Gave him $15.
Detectives wondered why she was meeting up with her ex-lover to give him money.
The wheels must be spinning now, as these stories aren't completely adding up.
Right.
With a warrant in hand, they searched Cindy's office.
We walked in, and the first thing that I saw was there was a picture of her and Michael Reese in in an 8x10 frame, and then underneath it was an 8x10 frame of a picture of her and Jeff Brown. That's correct.
And detectives found more.
There was a file that was labeled Jeff Brown, and inside of it was the lease for the apartment that she had rented for him, the car note.
And she's paying for everything.
She's paying for everything, that's correct.
Throughout the investigation, detectives were keeping prosecutors Joe Hicks and Dane Stewart in the loop. It was becoming clear he might be guilty of murder.
I think there was an idea that they wanted to be together, and the way for them to be together was to eliminate Michael Reese.
So prosecutors set out to build a case against the former pastor and his music director. Sometimes, they said, the work was disturbing.
I don't know how many naked pictures I had to look at on a phone dump from Jeff's phone or Cindy's phone.
Right up to the murder. But what was more important for the prosecutors was what the cell record showed the night Michael was shot. While Cindy sat with Michael in church, Jeff sent her a text that said, "Keep me posted."
And that came in, I think it's 6:57, so right before church lets out.
Prosecutors believed that text meant the two were plotting to kill Michael that night. And they had even more proof. They assumed Cindy called Jeff and secretly left the line open so he could listen in to what was happening between her and her husband.
At some point is an open line of communication for around 30 minutes that stays open all the way through, presumably to when Michael was killed.
And they had evidence that showed when Cindy got home after going to the grocery store, she was still on the phone with Jeff, even when...
Phone calls start recording as soon as the ring starts, and you can actually hear her talking to Jeff.
Someone's almost dead.
And it's a very calm, my phone's about to die, right before she's acting hysterical to 911.
So while the phone is ringing to 911...
It records.
It's recording?
Yes.
I had no idea.
While prosecutors were able to gather a wealth of information from the cell phone, could tell, however, that contrary to his alibi, Jeff was not 50 miles away.
It's not specific enough to say that it was inside the Reese house, but it was specific enough to say within hundreds of feet.
Since they had no evidence placing Jeff in the house, their best guess, Cindy was the shooter.
Most likely, he was lying in wait, either around the corner or on a close but nearby street.
But as soon as Michael and Cindy came home, Michael headed to the back of the house to let their dog in, and that's when they think Cindy shot him in the back of the head. And even though they couldn't prove who pulled the trigger, they weren't worried.
Under Alabama law, it doesn't matter. If you are involved and take substantial steps in the process, you're in for the whole deal. It doesn't matter who pulled the trigger.
It was now the same time, outside Cindy's office. They'd just come back from lunch together.
Did you hope at this point that one of them would turn on the other?
We were counting on it.
Absolutely.
Coming up.
There's no reason to think that he was going to plead at that point.
It doesn't sound like anyone is going to squeal.
She looked me in the eyes, dead in the eyes, and said, "My..."
Less than a month after the murder of Michael Reese, all eyes in Morris were on his wife, Cindy.
What's that old saying? If the spouse is killed, talk to the one that's breathing.
And her lover, former pastor Jeff Brown, and both had now been charged with murder. And as he followed the case, Morris resident Jerry Vincent wondered if one would flip on the other. So when he bumped into Cindy, who was out on bail...
I said, "Cindy, first one to squeal gets the best deal, and I think you know who's squealing." She looked me in the eyes, dead in the eyes, and said, "My lawyer says I got nothing. A cold-blooded killer."
To prosecutors, the notion that Cindy or Jeff would squeal for the best deal had all but evaporated by August 2015, when Jeff's trial was set to start.
There's no reason to think that he was going to plead at that point.
But just minutes before they started picking a jury, Jeff turned to his lawyer in court and told him he wanted to make a deal.
I just feel like it's one of those TV moments when suddenly this thing is flipped on its head.
There's some peace in knowing that he is going to take some responsibility for his part in this murder.
Jeff Brown finally admitted he had a hand in Michael Reese's death. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter and agreed to testify against Cindy. Her murder trial started in November 2016. Michael's family and friends, like Josh Freeman, were there.
We make sure that, that he got the justice that he deserved.
But there were others in the courtroom, like Cindy's Uncle Roy and her mother Judy, who held a very different view of what justice should look like.
In my heart of hearts, I know that she couldn't have done it. She is not a murderer.
You believed you knew who murdered Michael?
Oh, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Yes, ma'am.
Both were involved in Michael's death, but they were convinced Cindy was the mastermind. Her motive?
Getting a divorce in this community is really looked down upon. And rather than her looking like someone who was having an affair and got a divorce, she can be looked at as the victim if her husband gets killed.
Right off the bat, prosecutors knew they needed to shatter the image of Cindy Reese.
Grieving widow image that she was working so hard to portray, it really made sense to show that she was not that person.
To prove it, they laid out all the evidence that had been gathered against Cindy. The paperwork for the car and apartment found in her office, the cell phone data, those cold Milo's fries, and of course her affair with their star witness, Jeff Brown, who told the jury in a...
It relates to Cindy's trial, is it filled in a major piece of the puzzle.
That major piece? How the murder actually went down.
While he was on the phone with her, he heard a pop, and then after the murder at a local gas station, she told him, "It's done, he's gone."
Cindy shot Michael, Jeff claimed. He wasn't even there. Jeff then testified that
it pretty much was the final nail in her coffin, so to speak, as far as her trial went.
Or was it?
We hope that the jury would see that he was a liar.
Cindy's defense attorney, John Robbins, told the jury that Cindy couldn't have killed Michael. It was impossible. Michael was 3 inches taller than Cindy, yet the trajectory of the bullet indicates his killer loomed above him.
He was too short to create that angle.
Not too short? Jeff Brown, said the defense. Robbins also reminded the jury that there was no physical evidence linking Cindy to the crime. No blood, no gunshot residue. Not only that, he said, Jeff had the motive, not Cindy.
Would you characterize Jeff and Cindy's relationship that Jeff was obsessed?
Jeff was obsessed with Cindy because she was kind of his gravy train, so to speak.
Do you think that gave Jeff Brown the perfect motive, that he needed Michael out of the picture to continue that gravy train?
That certainly is a motive, isn't it?
And in an effort to wrest control of Cindy's image from the state, the defense took a calculated risk and put her on the stand. Admitted her marriage to Michael was rocky. She said she didn't want him dead and was adamant she knew nothing of Jeff's plan to kill him.
Why did you decide to have Cindy testify?
I think she, one, she wanted to, and two, I think with Jeff getting on the witness stand, I think she had to.
Which image of Cindy would the jury believe? It didn't take long to find out. The jury deliberated for just 90 minutes. And the verdict? Guilty of murder.
How were you feeling in that moment?
It was great that she was found guilty, but she's still alive, so she eventually will probably get out and live her life and stuff, and Michael doesn't get that chance.
On the other side of the courtroom, different emotion.
In a state of shock, really not believing what I had just heard.
She was convicted for being an adulteress and sentenced as a murderer.
But Cindy's cousin Delane thinks the jury got it right.
There was overwhelming evidence that Cindy was definitely involved.
The why is something she continues to struggle.
Caught up emotionally and it got out of hand? Or is she a monster? And did she plan it?
Important questions that are unlikely to be answered. As part of his plea deal, Jeff Brown received a 20-year prison sentence. Cindy Reese got 40 years. As for Michael Reese, the unwitting victim of a love triangle he wanted no part of, told soul with a big laugh and an even bigger heart.
How do you want people to remember Michael?
He was just a funny guy. He enjoyed life so much. He was just a good person, and anybody that ever knew him would tell you the same thing.
That's all for this edition of Dateline. We'll see you again Thursday at Nightly News. I'm Lester Holt. For all of us at NBC News, good night.
Even the Devil Went to Church, an analytical narrative of love, betrayal, and murder in the Bible Belt. Prologue. The Call. The night of the 26th of February, 2015, settled over Morris, Alabama with a cold, damp stillness. It was a Thursday, a day of the week that rarely offered surprises in the small, devout town just north of Birmingham. In Morris, life moved with the predictable cadence of Sunday sermons, Wednesday prayer meetings, and the slow, sweet drawl of Southern hospitality. But on this night, the quiet was about to be irrevocably shattered by a sound that always signaled a tear in the town's peaceful fabric, the frantic, high-pitched wail of a siren. The call came into the 911 dispatch center at 9:14 p.m. The voice on the other end was female, breathless, and escalating towards hysteria. 911, what is your emergency? I don't know if the house has been broken into or what, the woman stammered, her words tumbling over one another. The table's been knocked over. My husband. I can't find my husband. The dispatcher, trained to bring order to chaos, attempted to ground the caller. Okay, ma'am. Let's back up just a little bit. Can you tell me your name? Cindy. Henderson Reese. And your address, Cindy? She gave the address, a home on a quiet street directly across from the Morris Police Department. The irony of a potential crime unfolding within a stone's throw of law enforcement was not lost on the dispatcher. Cindy Reese explained that she had just returned from a quick trip to the Piggly Wiggly grocery store. She said her husband, Michael, was supposed to be home. He had been there when she left just a short while ago. But now, the house was in disarray, and Michael was gone. Within moments, the first officer was on the scene. The proximity of the police station meant the response was exceptionally swift. The officer found Cindy Reese outside, a portrait of distress under the cold, blue and red strobes of the patrol car. He tried to calm her as he approached the front door, his hand resting on his service weapon. Inside, the scene was immediately unsettling. Just as Cindy had described, a table in the entryway was overturned, its contents scattered across the floor. It was a classic sign of a struggle, a calling card of a burglary gone wrong. The officer moved cautiously through the house, calling out Michael's name. There was no response. The silence was heavy, thick with an unspoken dread. He moved deeper into the house, through a hallway leading towards the back. There, the scene transformed from unsettling to horrifying. A newly constructed, unfinished room adjoined the main house. The back door stood wide open, letting in the cold night air. And there, lying halfway between the finished hallway and the raw concrete of the new room, was the body of a man. He was face down, a dark pooling stain matting his hair and soaking into the unfinished floorboards. The victim was Michael Reese. He had been shot once, a single, devastating wound to the back of his head. Whatever had happened here, it wasn't just a burglary, it was an execution. As more officers arrived, the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department was called in to take the lead on what was clearly a homicide investigation. Sergeant Detective Bryan Street, a seasoned investigator, got the call that night. When he arrived, the small house was already a hub of grim activity, bathed in the harsh glow of portable floodlights and wrapped in the stark yellow of crime scene tape. Detective Street's first walkthrough confirmed the initial assessment. I walked in the front door, and there's a table turned over, he would later recall. Through the hallway, I could see the victim. The position of the body was significant. Michael's feet were near the back door, as if he had been heading out or had just come in when he was attacked from behind. The nature of the wound, a single shot to the back of the head, spoke volumes to the detective. This was not a random act of violence. It was personal, intimate, and brutally final. It suggested a profound level of betrayal, an attack by someone the victim trusted, or at the very least, did not perceive as a threat in his final moments. On a nearby table, untouched, sat a bag from Milo's, a local fast food chain famous for its seasoned fries. A burger and a carton of those fries lay cold, a silent testament to a final meal that was never eaten. Had Michael Reese surprised an intruder? Or was the disarray in the house a performance, a piece of stagecraft designed to mislead? As investigators worked to unravel the secrets contained within the four walls of the Reese home, they began to realize they were not just investigating a murder. They were peeling back the carefully constructed facade of a small southern town, exposing a story of forbidden love, simmering resentment, and a hypocrisy so profound it could curdle the sweet tea. The whispers and rumors that had been circulating through the pews and parking lots of Morris were about to find a voice in a murder investigation. And as the story unfolded, it would become a chilling reminder that sometimes even the devil went to church. Chapter 1. A Town Called Morris. Morris, Alabama, is the kind of town that can feel like a throwback to a simpler time. It's a place where faith isn't just a Sunday morning activity. It is the central pillar around which life is built. The steeples of its Baptist churches punctuate the skyline more decisively than its streetlights. Here, community is forged in potluck dinners, church picnics, and shared prayer. It is a world where everyone knows their neighbors, and by extension, everyone knows their neighbor's business. This deep-seated connectivity is both a comfort and a curse. It creates a powerful social safety net, a sense of belonging that is rare in the modern, fragmented world. But it also fosters an environment where reputation is paramount and judgment can be swift and severe. In Morris, the line between righteousness and ruin is drawn not just by the law, but by the subtle, powerful force of public opinion. Shaped and amplified by the ever-present current of gossip, gossip could flow through the town like a summer creek, sometimes idle and babbling, other times rising to a flash flood that could erode a person's standing in minutes. At the heart of Morris's spiritual life was Sardis Baptist Church. It was more than a building. It was the town's social and moral nucleus. To be a member in good standing at Sardis was to have a secure place in the community. And for a time, no one seemed more securely in their place than Cindy and Michael Reese, and their pastor, Jeff Brown. Michael Reese was, by all accounts, the quintessential good man. A gifted IT professional at a Birmingham hospital, he was the person friends and family called when their computers crashed or their Wi-Fi went out. His best friend, since the 7th grade, Josh Freeman, remembered him as a rock, a steady and dependable presence in the lives of everyone he knew. He was like an uncle to my kids, Josh said, the pain of the loss still raw years later. Michael was funny, with a quick wit and a kind heart. He was the art computer nerd, as his friends affectionately called him, a man who found joy in logic and order, but whose greatest gift was his boundless generosity and loyalty. Cindy Henderson Reese was known for her musical talent and her resilience. She had endured a tragedy that would have broken many when her first husband took his own life. The community had watched her navigate that dark valley of grief with a quiet strength. When she emerged, it was as the music director at Sardis Baptist, her voice leading the choir in hymns that filled the sanctuary each Sunday. She was seen as a woman of faith who had been tested and had held fast. And then there was Pastor Jeff Brown. He was a charismatic figure, a married father of 2 with another on the way, who had a knack for connecting with his congregation. He wasn't a product of a seminary dynasty. His past was a patchwork of varied professions, a police officer, a mover, even a hairdresser. This eclectic background, which some might have seen as a lack of direction, was spun as a strength. He was a man of the people, someone who understood the struggles of everyday life. His sermons were passionate, his counsel sought after. He was the spiritual shepherd of his flock. On the surface, these 3 lives were interwoven in the idyllic tapestry of small-town Christian life. Michael and Cindy were seen as a perfect match, 2 souls who had found a second chance at happiness after previous heartbreaks. Michael, though raised Methodist, had fully embraced Cindy's world, even getting baptized at Sardis Baptist to solidify their spiritual union. Pastor Jeff had officiated the baptism, a symbolic act that bound the 3 of them together in faith. But beneath this placid surface, a toxic undercurrent was gathering force. The very institution that was supposed to be their sanctuary had become the theater for a devastating betrayal. The rumor started as whispers, faint and deniable. People had seen things. Pastor Jeff's pest control truck parked too long, too often, near Cindy's house. The 2 of them, seen together in the truck, in the county employee parking deck, in a situation that looked far from pastoral counseling. In a larger city, such observations might have gone unnoticed or been quickly forgotten. But in Morris, they were kindling. The gossip spread, fanned by the delicious scandal of it all, the church music director and the pastor. It was a story too salacious to ignore. Cindy's cousin, Delaine Mullins, was one of the first to hear the rumors directly from Cindy, who vehemently denied them. Delaine, loyal to her cousin, initially dismissed the talk as absurd. Ergonomically, that's not even possible, she thought, considering their respective sizes and the cramped confines of a work truck. Yet the whispers persisted and grew louder. The relationship between Cindy and her pastor began to feel uncomfortably close, crossing the invisible line between parishioner and confidant. Jeff started showing up at the new church the Reeses attended after leaving Sardis, sometimes brazenly sitting between Michael and Cindy in the pew. The affair, once a whispered rumor, was becoming an open secret, a brazen challenge to the norms of their community. The God-fearing folks of Morris hoped the whispers weren't true, but they had to wonder. The story of Cindy and Pastor Jeff was a fracture in the town's moral bedrock, a scandal that threatened the sanctity of their most revered institution. They didn't know it yet, but this fracture was about to erupt into an act of violence that would expose the dark heart of a love triangle and prove the old adage that had been passed down through generations in the South. Even the devil went to church. Chapter 2. The Good Husband. To understand the depth of the tragedy that befell Morris, Alabama, one must first understand the man whose life was so violently cut short. Michael Reese was not a complicated man, but he was a man of profound decency. His character was the bedrock upon which his friends and family built their trust, and his absence left a void that could never be filled. Born and raised in the Birmingham area, Michael was a product of a stable, loving home. He was bright and inquisitive from a young age, drawn to the burgeoning world of computers in the 1,980 seconds and 90 seconds. While other kids were outside playing ball, Michael was often indoors, taking apart electronics to see how they worked, teaching himself the nascent languages of code. This wasn't an antisocial tendency. It was the mark of a methodical and curious mind. This passion would become his profession, leading him to a successful career as an IT specialist at a major regional hospital, where he was respected for his skill and his calm demeanor in a crisis. His first marriage, to his high school sweetheart, had ended in a painful divorce. The dissolution of that relationship had left him shattered, questioning his own judgment and his capacity for happiness. For a time, he retreated into himself, focusing on his work and his close-knit circle of friends. It was during this period that his friendship with Josh Freeman solidified into a brotherhood. They had known each other since middle school, but it was in adulthood, navigating the complexities of life, that their bond became unbreakable. He was just a kind soul, Josh would say, a simple phrase that captured Michael's essence perfectly. He was the friend you could call at 2 a.m. with a flat tire, and he wouldn't just tell you who to call. He'd show up himself, tools in hand. He possessed a dry, intelligent wit that could diffuse a tense situation or bring a room to laughter. He was steady, reliable, and utterly without pretense. When friends, including Delaine Mullins, decided to set him up with the recently widowed Cindy Henderson, it was done with the best of intentions. They saw two good people who had been dealt cruel blows by life, and they hoped that in each other, Michael and Cindy could find solace and a new beginning. "He's a good Christian guy," a mutual friend told Cindy. "Very involved in the church, very family-oriented." The description was accurate. Michael's faith was a quiet but constant part of his life. He saw in Cindy a woman of similar values, someone who understood the importance of family and church. Their courtship was gentle and unhurried. He was patient and kind, slowly winning the trust of a woman still healing from trauma. For Cindy's family, like her brother Chris Henderson, Michael was a godsend. "Everything I knew about him, every interaction I've had with him had been great," Chris recalled. "My husband even said that he had not seen her that happy in many, many, many years." For Michael, who had been so wounded by his divorce, Cindy was a chance to rebuild. He fell deeply in love. When they married, a little over a year after they started dating, he embraced her life as his own. He joined her at Sardis Baptist, where she was the music director. Though he had grown up in the Methodist Church, he didn't hesitate to be baptized as a Baptist. It was a public declaration of his commitment not just to his wife, but to the life they were building together. His friends saw it as a sign of his devotion. If anybody deserved to be happy, it was Michael. He threw himself into their shared life. He was a loving husband and a doting son-in-law. Cindy's mother, Judy, adored him. He was handy around the house, always willing to help with a project. They were in the process of building an extension onto their home in Morris, a project that symbolized their plans for a long future together. But as the months turned into years, subtle changes began to emerge. The happy, outgoing Michael started to become more withdrawn. Cindy would later tell detectives that he had started spending more and more time on his computer, retreating into the digital world he understood so well. She framed it as him losing interest in her, as a sign their marriage was failing. "He doesn't love me anymore," she claimed he had said. But his friends and family saw it differently. They saw a man reacting to a growing unease in his own home. The rumors about his wife and their pastor were impossible to ignore in a town as small as Morris. The affair was not just a private betrayal, it was a public humiliation. Michael, a man who valued loyalty and order, was trapped in a vortex of chaos and deceit. According to Cindy's mother, Michael was not just humiliated, he was afraid. "I am afraid of Jeff," he confessed to his mother-in-law. He believed Jeff Brown, the man who was supposed to be his spiritual guide, was capable of hurting him. "Yeah, I know he would if he got the opportunity," he told her. It was a chilling premonition. The man who was a rock for so many was on crumbling ground. He had tried to salvage his marriage, even taking Cindy back to Disney World, the site of their honeymoon, for their 5th anniversary. It was a trip meant to rekindle the magic, but it likely felt more like a desperate attempt to patch a sinking ship. The photos from that trip, which Cindy said she hadn't even had time to put in a frame, would become a haunting memento of a love that was already lost. On the night of his murder, Michael Reese came home from work and picked up dinner from Milo's for himself and his wife. A simple, mundane act of domestic life. He walked into his home, a place that should have been his sanctuary, unaware that he was walking into a meticulously laid trap. The life of the good husband, the kind soul, the steady friend, was about to be extinguished by a cold and calculated act of violence, leaving behind only the question of why a man so loved could meet such a hateful end. Chapter 3. The Grieving Widow. Cindy Henderson Reese was a woman defined by 2 great tragedies. The first, the suicide of her husband, cast a long shadow over her life, shaping her identity in the eyes of the community as a woman of sorrow and resilience. The second, the murder of her next husband, Michael, would redefine her completely, transforming her from a figure of sympathy into a subject of suspicion and ultimately a convicted killer. To understand her journey is to trace the path of a woman who, whether by misfortune or design, was always at the center of a storm. Growing up in the Morris area, Cindy was known for her sweet disposition and her passion for music. The church was her stage and her sanctuary. Her talent at the piano and her clear, strong voice made her a natural fit for the role of music director at Sardis Baptist. It was a position of respect, a role that placed her at the spiritual and social heart of the community. Her first marriage was happy, by all outward appearances. His sudden death by suicide was a profound shock to everyone, and it plunged Cindy into a deep and understandable depression. Her cousin, Delane Mullins, watched her struggle. She just sort of wouldn't have any motivation or maybe any hope that life was going to get any better anytime soon, Delane remembered. The town rallied around her, offering prayers and casseroles, the twin currencies of Southern comfort. She was the grieving widow, a figure deserving of compassion and protection. When she began dating Michael Reese, it was seen as a triumphant new chapter. Here was a good, stable man, a Christian man, who could offer her the happiness she so richly deserved. Their wedding was a joyful affair, a celebration of second chances. To her family and friends, it seemed as if the sun was finally breaking through the clouds that had hung over Cindy's life for so long. But a different kind of relationship was beginning to form in the shadows, one that would prove far more powerful than her marital vows. Her connection with Pastor Jeff Brown started, as she would later claim, innocently enough. He was her pastor, her spiritual advisor. She was struggling in her marriage to Michael, she told him. He was having his own problems at home. They found in each other a sympathetic ear. The more I opened up, the more he was seeing, Cindy explained during her police interrogation. With him helping you through what you were going with at home, that's how y'all became closer. It was a classic, almost cliché, narrative of emotional infidelity. Two people, feeling misunderstood in their marriages, find solace in a shared, secret intimacy. But with Cindy and Jeff, It quickly spiraled beyond emotional support. "The more we just kind of fell in love with each other," she admitted. This love affair was not just a moral failing. It was a strategic one, conducted with a staggering lack of discretion. The rumors of them being seen in the parking deck were not unfounded. An investigator with the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, Sergeant Ellen Shire, had been aware of complaints about a couple having sex in the county parking deck, specifically involving a man in a pest control truck. When Sergeant Street called her on the night of the murder, the connection was instant and chilling. "You're never going to guess whose homicide I'm working," he told her. "Michael Reese. Cindy is the one that was in the parking deck." Confronted with the rumors by the elders of her church, Cindy was defiant. She claimed they were lies, vicious gossip meant to tarnish her name and the pastor's. "The more we tried to fight it, the worse it got," she said. "So I just resigned." She cast herself as the victim of a witch hunt, a righteous woman driven from her beloved church by spiteful tongues. But behind this facade of victimhood, she was doubling down on her secret life. After resigning from the church, she told detectives, the affair escalated to a physical relationship. More than that, it became a financial one. Cindy, who worked a modest job for the county, became Jeff Brown's benefactor. Investigators would later find a file in her office meticulously labeled Jeff Brown. Inside was the lease for an apartment she had rented for him and the payment information for his car. She was paying for everything, bankrolling her lover's life, while her own husband grew increasingly fearful and isolated. On the night of the murder, Cindy's actions were a study in contradiction. Her 911 call was filled with the panic of a woman who had stumbled upon a scene of chaos. Yet, her story to the police was riddled with inconsistencies that immediately raised red flags for the seasoned investigators. The Milo's fries were the first, most bizarre clue. In the South, Milo's fries are a local delicacy, best eaten hot and fresh. The idea that Cindy, after picking up this coveted meal, would drop the bag at home and immediately leave for the grocery store without taking a single bite struck Detective Street as profoundly strange. As bizarre as it sounds, yes, he confirmed, that was a red flag. Her reason for the urgent grocery run was flimsy. She claimed they needed lunch meat and orange juice, but investigators found both items already in the refrigerator. Then there was her claim that she couldn't find Michael. Detective Street found this particularly hard to believe. "As soon as I walked in the house, I could see the victim lying in the back door," he stated. "It would have been hard for her to be looking for her husband and not have seen him laying there." Her story continued to unravel. She told police that as she was driving to the grocery store, Jeff had called her, saying he had forgotten his wallet and needed gas money. She claimed she met him at a gas station and gave him $50. It was an admission that placed her with her lover in the immediate aftermath of her husband's murder, a meeting she tried to frame as a simple act of charity. But the most damning evidence came from her own phone. As she was dialing 911, her phone was still connected to Jeff from a previous call. The initial moments of the 911 call were recorded over this open line. In the background, just before the dispatcher answers, Cindy's voice can be heard, not in a state of hysteria, but in a calm, almost conversational tone. She is speaking to Jeff. "My phone's about to die," she says. Seconds later, she is screaming hysterically to the 911 operator. It was a performance, and the investigators had a recording of what was happening backstage. Throughout the investigation and her trial, Cindy Reese maintained her innocence. She admitted to being an adulterer, but insisted she was not a murderer. Her defense painted her as a woman manipulated by an obsessive lover, a man who would do anything to keep his gravy train running. She took the stand in her own defense, a calculated risk to present her version of the grieving widow, a flawed but not fatal woman. But the jury did not see the victim. They saw the file labeled Jeff Brown. They heard the calm voice on the 911 recording. They listened to the testimony of her lover, who claimed she was the one who pulled the trigger. They saw a woman who, rather than face the social consequences of a divorce, chose to become a widow for a second time. In the end, the community that had once wrapped her in sympathy now saw her as a monster, a cold-blooded killer who had used her faith and her grief as a mask for a heart full of malice. Chapter 4. The Shepherd and His Flock. Jeffrey David Brown was a man of many hats, and a pastor's collar was only the most recent one he had chosen to wear. Before he stood in the pulpit at Sardis Baptist Church, Preaching the gospel and counseling the troubled souls of Morris, he had been a police officer, a furniture mover, and a hairdresser. He was a chameleon, a man who seemed to search for an identity by trying on new ones, never quite finding one that fit for long. This history, a trail of short-lived careers, was not the typical resume of a Southern Baptist preacher. It was the mark of a restless, perhaps opportunistic spirit. When he arrived in Morris, he brought with him a family, a wife, and 2 young children, with a third on the way. To the congregation, they were the picture of a perfect pastor's family. And Jeff himself possessed a certain kind of charisma. He wasn't a fire and brimstone orator, but he had an easy way with people. He could make them feel seen, heard, and understood. He projected an aura of empathy that drew people in, particularly those, like Cindy Reese, who were navigating personal turmoil. But beneath the surface of the caring shepherd was a man of deep-seated insecurities and a troubling lack of a moral compass. His constant career changes suggested a man who was good at starting things, but lacked the discipline or integrity to see them through. He was, as one observer wryly noted, a jack of all trades and good at none. Each job he left behind may have carried with it its own untold story of failure or dissatisfaction. The ministry perhaps offered him something the other jobs could not, a position of inherent authority and trust, a captive audience, and a direct line to the most vulnerable parts of people's lives. His relationship with Cindy Reese began under the guise of pastoral care. He became her confidant, the one person she could tell about the supposed problems in her marriage to Michael. But this counseling soon morphed into a clandestine affair. For Jeff, Cindy represented more than just a physical conquest. She was an affirmation of his own desirability and power. She was also his financial salvation. Despite being a married man with a growing family and a position of leadership in the church, Jeff Brown was not financially stable. His job at a pest control company, which he took after leaving the full-time ministry, was not lucrative. The image of the pastor in a beat-up pest control truck became a running joke, but it spoke to a deeper reality. Jeff was a man who wanted more than he could afford, and in Cindy, he found a willing patron. She paid for his apartment. She paid his car note. She handed him cash for gas. He was, for all intents and purposes, a kept man. This financial dependence created a powerful motive for murder. Michael Reese was not just a romantic rival. He was an obstacle to Jeff's comfortable lifestyle. If Michael divorced Cindy, or if Cindy, out of guilt or reconciliation, cut Jeff off, his gravy train would come to an abrupt end. Michael had to be eliminated for the arrangement to continue. His obsession with Cindy was noted by many in the town. Jerry Vincent, the town's building inspector, recalled seeing Jeff's truck parked near the Reese house at odd hours. Was he waiting for Mike to go to work, or waiting for Cindy to come out? Vincent wondered. What was he doing down there? It was the behavior of a stalker, not a secret lover trying to be discreet. His brazenness, like sitting between Cindy and Michael at their new church, was a display of dominance, a way of marking his territory. As the police investigation intensified, Jeff's veneer of the shocked and grieving friend quickly cracked. During his interrogation, he was defensive and agitated. When confronted with the affair, he didn't show remorse. He showed anger. He gripped the arms of his chair so tightly his knuckles turned white. His primary emotion seemed to be jealousy. The thought of Cindy still being intimate with her own husband sickened him, he admitted. "I'm not going to lie to you," he told detectives. "It sickened me, him touching her." He saw Cindy not as another man's wife, but as his possession. He tried to establish an alibi, claiming he was 50 miles away at a friend's house in a storage unit at the time of the murder. But his cell phone told a different story. The data placed him not miles away, but within hundreds of feet of the Reese home, lying in wait. Even more damning was the revelation that came from 2 of Jeff's co-workers at the pest control company. They told police that about a month before the murder, Jeff had approached them with a shocking proposition. He had allegedly offered them his car and money to hurt Michael Reese. They had reported it to a different police department, so the information didn't reach the homicide investigators until after the fact. But it was a bombshell. It showed premeditation. It showed a man actively plotting to eliminate his rival. When the walls finally closed in, Jeff Brown made the only move he had left, the move of a survivor. Just minutes before his own murder trial was set to begin, he cut a deal. He pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter in exchange for his testimony against Cindy. He threw the woman he claimed to love, the woman who had financed his life, under the bus to save himself. In his statement to the court, he painted Cindy as the architect of the murder. He claimed he was on the phone with her that night when he heard a pop. He said she met him at the gas station and calmly told him, "It's done. He's gone." He alleged that Cindy was the one who pulled the trigger. Was he telling the truth? Or was it the ultimate act of a master manipulator, shifting the blame to his accomplice to secure a lighter sentence? The defense would argue the latter, portraying him as an obsessed killer who used Cindy for her money and then framed her for a crime he committed. The trajectory of the bullet, they argued, suggested a shooter taller than Cindy, a height that more closely matched Jeff Brown. Ultimately, it didn't matter who pulled the trigger. Under the law, they were both responsible. But in the court of public opinion, Jeff Brown remained an enigma. Was he a weak man who fell in love and got caught up in a deadly plan? Or was he a cold, calculating predator hiding behind a pastor's collar? The answer likely lies somewhere in the murky space between the two. He was the shepherd who led his flock astray, a man of God who made a deal with the devil, and in the end, chose self-preservation over love, loyalty, and the truth. Chapter 5. The Trial and the Aftermath. The trial of Cindy Reese, held in November 2016, was more than a legal proceeding. It was the final dramatic act in a tragedy that had captivated and horrified the community of Morris. The courtroom was divided, both literally and figuratively. On one side sat Michael Reese's family and friends, led by the steadfast Josh Freeman, their faces etched with grief and a quiet determination to see justice served. On the other side were Cindy's supporters, her mother Judy and Uncle Roy, who clung to the belief that the woman they knew and loved could not be a killer. The prosecution, led by Joe Hicks and Dane Stewart, had a clear objective: to dismantle the image of Cindy Reese as a grieving widow and reconstruct her as a manipulative and cold-hearted killer. The grieving widow image that she was working so hard to portray, it really made sense to show that she was not that person, Stewart explained. Their case was a methodical presentation of the evidence that detectives had painstakingly gathered. They walked the jury through the inconsistencies in Cindy's story, the absurd tale of the Piggly Wiggly run, the untouched Milo's fries that no true Alabamian would ignore. They presented the cell phone data, the digital breadcrumbs that laid bare the secret communication and destroyed Jeff Brown's alibi. They showed the jury the contents of the Jeff Brown file found in Cindy's office, the receipts and lease agreements that proved she was bankrolling the affair. This wasn't a woman being taken advantage of. This was a woman investing in a new life, a life that had no room for her husband. The climax of the prosecution's case was, of course, the testimony of their star witness, Jeff Brown. Dressed in a jailhouse jumpsuit, the former pastor took the stand to testify against his former lover. He was the linchpin of their case, the only person who could place Cindy at the center of the murder plot. He recounted his version of events in a steady, practiced voice. He told the jury about the open phone line, the chilling pop he heard, and Cindy's calm declaration at the gas station. "It's done. He's gone." He claimed Cindy shot Michael, and he was merely an accessory, waiting nearby. Cindy's defense attorney, John Robbins, fought back fiercely during cross-examination. He painted Jeff Brown as a consummate liar, a serial manipulator who was obsessed with Cindy, not for love, but for money. She was kind of his gravy train, Robbins argued. Michael's murder, he posited, was Jeff's way of ensuring the money kept flowing. Robbins hammered on the fact that there was no physical evidence, no gunshot residue, no blood, no fingerprints linking Cindy to the shooting. He also raised the issue of the bullet's trajectory, arguing that the downward angle of the wound suggested a shooter taller than the petite Cindy, someone more the height of Jeff Brown. In a high-stakes gamble, the defense put Cindy Reese on the stand. It was her chance to face the jury, to tell her story, and to convince them of her innocence. She admitted her marriage to Michael was rocky. She admitted to the affair with Jeff, but she was adamant that she did not kill her husband and knew nothing of Jeff's plan to do so. "I think with Jeff getting on the witness stand, I think she had to," Robbins said of the decision. She had to counter his narrative with her own. But which image of Cindy would the jury believe? The flawed but innocent woman portrayed by the defense, or the cold, calculating adulterer described by the prosecution and her own former lover? The answer came with shocking speed. After weeks of testimony, The jury deliberated for just 90 minutes. When they returned, the verdict was read, guilty of murder. A wave of relief washed over one side of the courtroom. Michael's friends and family wept and embraced. "It was great that she was found guilty," Josh Freeman said, though the victory was bittersweet. "She's still alive, you know. Michael doesn't get that chance." On the other side, there was disbelief. "In a state of shock, really not believing what I had just heard," Cindy's Uncle Roy recalled. To her family, the verdict was a miscarriage of justice. She was convicted for being an adulteress and sentenced as a murderer. Cindy Reese was sentenced to 40 years in prison. As part of his plea deal, Jeff Brown received a 20-year sentence. The why of it all continues to haunt those left behind. Was it, as prosecutors argued, a cold-blooded plot to escape a marriage without the social stigma of divorce in their devout community? By becoming a widow, Cindy could retain the sympathy of her peers while being free to be with her lover. Or was it something that spiraled out of control, an emotional affair that took a dark and violent turn? As her cousin Delane Mullins wondered, was she caught up emotionally and it got out of hand? Or is she a monster and did she plan it? The questions may never be fully answered. What is certain is that a web of lies, deceit, and forbidden passion woven in the pews and back rooms of a small-town church led to the senseless death of a good man. Michael Reese, the unwitting victim in a love triangle he wanted no part of, was remembered by his friends not for the sordid details of his death, but for the quiet decency of his life. "He was just a funny guy. He enjoyed life so much," said Josh Freeman, his voice thick with emotion. "He was just a good person, and anybody that ever knew him would tell you the same thing." In the end, the story serves as a dark parable for the town of Morris. It revealed the hypocrisy that can fester beneath a veneer of piety and the terrible violence that can be born from the most common of human failings. The gossip that had ripped through the town turned out to be more than just talk. It was the smoke rising from a slow-burning fire of betrayal that would ultimately consume 3 lives and forever scar a community that believed its faith could protect it from the evil that walks in plain sight. Even the devil went to church. A narrative of love, betrayal, and murder in the Bible Belt. Prologue. The Siren in the Stillness. The night of the 26th of February, 2015, descended upon Morris, Alabama, not with the gentle hush of a southern evening, but with a cold, clinging dampness that seemed to seep into the very bones of the town. It was a Thursday, a day of the week that held no promise of excitement, a mere stepping stone to the sanctity of the coming weekend. In Morris, a small, devout town nestled in the shadow of Birmingham, the rhythm of life was a metronome set to the cadence of faith, the resonant call of Sunday morning sermons, the quiet contemplation of Wednesday prayer meetings, the communal warmth of potluck dinners where gossip was served alongside sweet tea and pecan pie. It was a place of deep roots and deeper convictions, a town where the predictable cycle of life was a comforting bulwark against the chaos of the outside world. But on this night, that bulwark was about to crumble. The quiet was a fragile veneer, waiting to be shattered by a sound that always signaled a tear in the town's peaceful, carefully woven fabric. The frantic, high-pitched wail of a siren slicing through the still, heavy air. The call had torn through the electronic calm of the 911 dispatch center at precisely 9:14 p.m. The voice that crackled over the line was female, a thin thread of sound stretched taut with a panic that was rapidly escalating into raw hysteria. Each word was a gasp, a desperate scramble for air and sense. 911. What is your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was a practiced, steady monotone, an anchor of calm in a sea of distress. I don't know. The house. Has it been broken into? I don't know what. The woman stammered, her words tumbling over one another in a frantic rush. The table's been knocked over. My husband. I can't find my husband. The dispatcher, a cartographer of chaos, attempted to chart the geography of the caller's fear. Okay, ma'am. I need you to take a breath. Let's back up just a little bit. Can you tell me your name? A shaky, stuttering breath. Cindy. Oh, Henderson Reese. And your address, Cindy? She recited the address. A home on a quiet, unassuming street. where the streetlights cast long, lonely shadows. The address had a feature that was both unremarkable and, in this moment, deeply ironic. It stood directly across the street from the Morris Police Department. A crime, unfolding in the very shadow of the law. The dispatcher absorbed the detail without comment as Cindy Reese's story spilled out. She had just returned, she explained, from a quick trip to the Piggly Wiggly, just a few items. Her husband, Michael, was supposed to be home. He was home when she left, not 30 minutes ago. But now, the house was a wreck, the front door ajar, and Michael was gone. The response was not just swift. It was practically instantaneous. Within moments, the first patrol car was pulling up to the curb, its flashing lights painting the quiet street in frantic, silent strokes of blue and red. The first officer on the scene, a young man who had handled more lost dogs than potential homicides in his tenure, found Cindy Reese outside, a silhouette of pure distress against the pulsing strobes. She was pacing, her hands twisting in the fabric of her coat, her face a pale mask of terror. He approached her slowly, his training kicking in, his voice low and calming as he tried to guide her away from the house, his hand resting instinctively on the cold, reassuring weight of his service weapon. He left her in the care of a second arriving officer and pushed open the front door. The scene that greeted him was one of quiet, violent disarray, just as Cindy had described. A small table in the entryway lay on its side, its contents, a stack of mail, a set of keys, a decorative bowl scattered across the hardwood floor like the aftermath of a sudden, brutal tantrum. It was a classic sign of a struggle, a textbook indicator of a burglary gone horribly wrong. The officer drew his weapon, his heart pounding a heavy rhythm against his ribs. He moved cautiously through the silent house, his voice sharp and official, cutting through the thick air. "Morris Police? Is anyone here?" There was no response, only an oppressive silence. A heavy, waiting stillness that felt thick with an unspoken dread. He cleared the living room, the kitchen. Each room was empty, undisturbed. He moved deeper into the house, down a narrow hallway that led toward the back, and it was there that the scene shifted from unsettling to utterly horrifying. The hallway opened into a newly constructed, unfinished room, an addition to the main house that was still raw concrete and exposed beams. The back door stood wide open, a dark, gaping mouth that had swallowed the peace of the home and exhaled the cold night air. And there, lying half in the finished hallway and half on the cold, unforgiving concrete of the new room, was the body of a man. He was face down, his form strangely still, a dark, viscous pool spreading out from beneath his head, matting his hair and soaking into the porous floorboards in a slowly expanding stain of finality. The victim was Michael Reese. It was clear, even from a distance, that he was gone. It was also clear that this was no random act. He had been shot once, a single, devastating wound to the back of his head. Whatever had transpired in this house, it was not a burglary. It was an execution. As more officers swarmed the scene, the call went out. This was beyond the scope of the small Morris police force. This was a homicide. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Department was brought in to take the lead. Sergeant Detective Bryan Street, a man whose face was a roadmap of long nights and grim discoveries, got the call. When he arrived, the small house was no longer a home. It was a crime scene, a sterile island of grim activity bathed in the harsh, unflattering glow of portable floodlights and cordoned off from the curious world by the stark, insistent yellow of police tape. Detective Street's first walkthrough was a quiet, methodical ritual. He absorbed the details, letting the scene speak to him. "I walked in the front door, and there's a table turned over," he would later recall, his voice flat, professional. "Through the hallway, I could see the victim. The position of the body told a story. Michael's feet were near the back door, his posture suggesting he had either been heading out or had just come in when he was ambushed from behind. The nature of the wound, that single, precise shot to the back of the head, spoke volumes to the seasoned detective. This was not the chaotic violence of a panicked burglar. This was personal, intimate, and brutally final. It suggested a profound, chilling level of betrayal, an attack by someone the victim knew, someone he trusted, someone he had turned his back on in his final unsuspecting moments. On a nearby table, a silent, poignant detail sat untouched. A paper bag from Milo's, a local fast food institution revered for its uniquely seasoned French fries. A burger and a carton of those fries lay cold and forgotten. A silent testament to a final meal that was never eaten. A life interrupted between the mundane and the monstrous. Had Michael Reese surprised an intruder and paid the ultimate price? Or was the disarray in the house a performance, a meticulously crafted piece of stagecraft designed to mislead, to point away from a truth far closer to home? As the investigators began the painstaking work of unraveling the secrets contained within the four walls of the Reese home, they quickly realized they were not just investigating a murder. They were peeling back the carefully constructed pious facade of a small southern town, exposing a dark, tangled story of forbidden love, simmering resentment, and a hypocrisy so profound it could curdle the sweet tea. The whispers and rumors that had been circulating through the pews and parking lots of Morris, once dismissed as idle gossip, were about to find a powerful, damning voice in a murder investigation. And as the story unfolded, piece by chilling piece, it would become a haunting reminder that in the shadowed corners of the human heart, faith is not always a shield, and that sometimes even the devil goes to church. Chapter 1. The Gospel of Gossip. Morris, Alabama is a town stitched together by the twin threads of faith and familiarity. It is a place where the steeples of its Baptist churches rise with more certainty than the sun on a cloudy day, casting long, righteous shadows over the manicured lawns and quiet streets below. Life here is not merely influenced by the church, it is governed by it. The social calendar is a liturgical calendar, marked by Sunday services, Wednesday night Bible studies, and seasonal church picnics where the bonds of community are forged over shared platters of fried chicken and whispered confidences. It is a world where everyone knows their neighbors' names, their children's names, their prayer requests, and, by extension, everyone knows their neighbor's business. This deep-seated, interwoven connectivity is both the town's greatest comfort and its most potent curse. It creates a powerful social safety net, an unspoken promise that in times of trouble, a casserole will appear on your doorstep and a prayer circle will form in your name. It offers a sense of belonging that is a rare and precious commodity in the modern, fragmented world. But this same intimacy also fosters an environment where reputation is paramount, a fragile currency that can be devalued in an instant. In Morris, the line between righteousness and ruin is drawn not by the bold ink of the law, but by the subtle, indelible stain of public opinion, a force shaped and amplified by the ever-present, ever-flowing current of gossip. Gossip in Morris could move like a summer creek, sometimes idle and babbling, a harmless diversion on a slow afternoon. But it could also swell without warning, transforming into a flash flood of speculation and judgment that could erode a person's standing, their family's honor, their very place in the community, in a matter of minutes. At the absolute heart of Morris's spiritual and social life stood Sardis Baptist Church. It was more than a building of brick and stained glass. It was the town's moral nucleus, the stage upon which the dramas of life, death, faith, and fallibility were played out each week. To be a member in good standing at Sardis was to have a secure and respected place in the community. And for a time, no one seemed more securely, more righteously in their place than the golden couple, Cindy and Michael Reese, and their charismatic spiritual guide, Pastor Jeff Brown. Michael Reese was, by every conceivable measure, the quintessential good man. A gifted and indispensable IT professional at a large Birmingham hospital, he was the calm, logical voice friends and family turned to when their digital worlds descended into chaos. His best friend since the awkward days of 7th grade, Josh Freeman, remembered him not just as a friend, but as a rock, a steady, unshakable presence in the turbulent lives of everyone he knew. He was like an uncle to my kids, Josh would later say, the pain of his loss still a raw, open wound years after the fact. Michael was funny, possessing a quick, dry wit, and his heart was a reservoir of kindness. He was the art computer nerd, as his friends affectionately called him, a man who found a deep, satisfying joy in the clean logic of a well-written code, but whose greatest gift was his boundless, unquestioning generosity and loyalty. Cindy Henderson Reese was the embodiment of Southern grace and resilience. Her musical talent was a gift to the church, but it was her personal story that had truly endeared her to the community. She had endured a tragedy that would have broken many, the sudden, shocking suicide of her first husband. The town had watched her navigate that dark, lonely valley of grief with a quiet, steely strength that they mistook for unwavering faith. When she emerged from her mourning, it was to take her place at the church piano as the music director. Her clear, strong voice leading the choir in hymns of praise and perseverance that filled the sanctuary each Sunday. She was seen as a woman of faith who had been tested by fire and had emerged not just intact, but purified. And then there was Pastor Jeff Brown. He was not a man born to the cloth, not a product of a long line of seminary graduates. He was a charismatic chameleon, a married father of two with another on the way, who had found his way to the pulpit after a series of disparate and short-lived careers. He had been a police officer, a furniture mover, even a hairdresser. This eclectic, almost nomadic background, which some might have seen as a sign of instability or a lack of direction, was spun as a strength. He was a man of the people, it was said, someone who understood the struggles of everyday life because he had lived them. His sermons were passionate, relatable, his counsel eagerly sought after. He was the spiritual shepherd of his flock, and they trusted him implicitly. On the surface, these three lives were woven together in the idyllic, sun-drenched tapestry of small-town Christian life. Michael and Cindy were seen as a perfect, blessed match, two deserving souls who had found a second chance at happiness after navigating the treacherous waters of previous heartbreaks. Michael, though raised in the more reserved Methodist tradition, had fully and enthusiastically embraced Cindy's world. He had knelt before the congregation at Sardis Baptist to be baptized into their faith, a public and profound act to solidify their spiritual union. Pastor Jeff had been the one to perform the baptism, his hands on Michael's shoulders as he lowered him into the water, a symbolic act that seemed to bind the three of them together in a holy trinity of faith and friendship. But beneath this placid, sanctified surface, a toxic and insidious undercurrent was gathering force. The very institution that was supposed to be their sanctuary, their refuge from the sins of the world, had become the theater for a devastating and brazen betrayal. The rumors began as whispers, faint and easily deniable, carried on the currents of after-church coffee hours and midweek phone calls. People had seen things, small, incongruous details that didn't quite add up. Pastor Jeff's pest control truck, the humble vehicle of his weekday job, parked for too long, too often, on the quiet street near Cindy's house during the day when Michael was at work. The two of them, seen together in the cramped cab of that same truck in the county employee parking deck, in a situation that looked far from pastoral counseling. In a larger, more anonymous city, such fleeting observations might have gone unnoticed, or been quickly forgotten, dismissed as meaningless coincidences. But in the close-knit, watchful world of Morris, they were kindling on a pyre of suspicion. The gossip spread, fanned by the delicious, forbidden scandal of it all. The righteous church music director and the married pastor. It was a story too salacious, too ripe with hypocrisy, to ignore. Cindy's own cousin, Delaine Mullins, was one of the first to hear the rumors directly from Cindy, who met the accusations with a furious, indignant denial. Delaine, fiercely loyal to her cousin, initially dismissed the talk as absurd, even logistically impossible. Ergonomically, that's not even possible, she thought to herself, picturing their respective sizes in the cramped confines of a commercial work truck. Yet, the whispers persisted, growing louder, more confident, more detailed. The relationship between Cindy and her pastor began to feel uncomfortably, publicly close, crossing the invisible but sacred line between parishioner and confidant. The betrayal escalated from furtive meetings to acts of stunning audacity. Jeff started showing up at the new church the Reeses had begun attending after leaving the judgmental glare of Sardis. He would arrive after they were seated and, on more than one occasion, brazenly slide into the pew to sit directly between Michael and Cindy, a human wedge driving them apart even in the house of God. The affair, once a whispered rumor, was becoming an open secret, a brazen and arrogant challenge to the moral code of their entire community. The God-fearing folks of Morris, who had once looked upon Cindy with such sympathy, now watched with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. They hoped the whispers weren't true for the sake of the church, for the sake of Michael, that good, kind man. But in their hearts, they had to wonder. The story of Cindy and Pastor Jeff was a deep, ugly fracture in the town's moral bedrock, a scandal that threatened the sanctity of their most revered institution. They didn't know it yet, but this fracture was about to erupt into an act of shocking violence that would expose the dark, tangled heart of a love triangle and prove, with brutal finality, the old, cynical adage that had been passed down through generations in the South. Even the devil went to church. Chapter 2. The Good Husband. To truly comprehend the depth of the tragedy that befell Morris, Alabama, to grasp the sheer, senseless waste of it all, one must first understand the man whose life was so violently, so callously, cut short. Michael Reese was not a complicated man, but he was a man of profound and unwavering decency. His character was the bedrock upon which his friends and family built their trust, the foundation of their world. His sudden, violent absence did not just leave a void. It created a chasm, a gaping wound in the lives of all who knew him that time could never fully heal. Born and raised in the sprawling suburbs of Birmingham, Michael was the product of a stable, loving home, a world of scraped knees, little league games, and unwavering parental support. He was bright and deeply inquisitive from a young age, his curiosity not directed toward the typical boyhood pursuits, but toward the burgeoning, mysterious world of computers in the 1,980 seconds and 90 seconds. While other kids were outside chasing fly balls, Michael was often indoors, surrounded by a tangle of wires and circuit boards, carefully taking apart radios, televisions, and eventually, his family's first hulking desktop computer, just to see how they worked. This wasn't an antisocial tendency. It was the mark of a methodical, patient, and brilliant mind. He taught himself the nascent languages of code, finding a serene, elegant logic in the flow of digital information. This childhood passion would become his lifelong profession, leading him to a successful and respected career as an IT specialist at a major regional hospital, where he was known as the calm in the storm, the man who could resurrect a crashed server and restore order to a system on the brink of chaos with a quiet, reassuring competence. His first marriage, to his high school sweetheart, had been a storybook romance that ended in the grim, messy prose of divorce. The dissolution of that relationship, a future he had so carefully planned, had left him shattered. It was a blow not just to his heart, but to his very sense of self. He questioned his judgment, his ability to make someone happy, his own worthiness of love. For a time, he retreated into the safe, predictable world of his work and the comfortable camaraderie of his close-knit circle of friends. It was during this period of healing that his friendship with Josh Freeman, a bond forged in the fires of middle school awkwardness, solidified into a true and unconditional brotherhood. They had known each other for years, but it was in the trenches of adulthood, navigating the minefields of heartbreak and disappointment, that their bond became unbreakable. He was just a kind soul, Josh would say, his voice thick with the memory of his lost friend. It was a simple, unadorned phrase, but it captured Michael's essence with perfect clarity. He was the friend you could call at 2 a.m. with a flat tire on a deserted highway. And he wouldn't just offer advice. He'd show up himself, a thermos of coffee in one hand and a set of tools in the other. He possessed a dry, intelligent wit that could diffuse a tense situation or bring a room to helpless, rolling laughter. He was steady, reliable, and utterly without pretense or artifice. What you saw with Michael was what you got. A good man, through and through. When friends, a group that included Cindy's own cousin, Delane Mullins, decided to orchestrate a meeting between him and the recently widowed Cindy Henderson, it was an act born of the purest intentions. They saw two fundamentally good people who had been dealt cruel, undeserved blows by life, and they hoped that in each other, Michael and Cindy could find solace, companionship, and a new beginning. "He's a good Christian guy," a mutual friend had told Cindy, as if presenting his resume for her heart. Very involved in the church, very family-oriented. The description was entirely accurate. Michael's faith was a quiet but constant current in his life, a source of strength and moral guidance. He saw in Cindy a woman of similar values, someone who understood the importance of family, faith, and community. Their courtship was a gentle, unhurried dance. He was patient and kind, slowly and respectfully winning the trust of a woman still cocooned in the fragile shell of her grief. For Cindy's family, Like her brother, Chris Henderson, Michael was not just a new boyfriend. He was a godsend, a beacon of hope. Everything I knew about him, every interaction I've had with him had been great, Chris recalled. The change in his sister was palpable. My husband even said that he had not seen her that happy in many, many, many years. For Michael, who had been so deeply wounded by the betrayal of his divorce, Cindy was a chance to rebuild, to believe in love again. He fell for her, deeply and completely. When they married a little over a year after they started dating, he didn't just welcome her into his life. He embraced hers as his own. He followed her to Sardis Baptist Church, where she was the revered music director. Though he had grown up in the Methodist Church, with its different rhythms and rituals, he didn't hesitate for a moment to be baptized as a Baptist in her church. It was a profound public declaration of his commitment, not just to his new wife, but to the life, the community, and the future they were building together. His friends saw it as the ultimate sign of his devotion. After all the pain he had endured, if anybody deserved to be happy, it was Michael. He threw himself into their shared life with a quiet, joyful enthusiasm. He was a loving, attentive husband and a doting, helpful son-in-law. Cindy's mother, Judy, adored him. He was handy around the house, always willing to tackle a leaky faucet or a sputtering lawnmower. At the time of his death, they were in the process of building a large extension onto their modest home in Morris, a project that was a tangible symbol of their plans for a long and expansive future together. A future filled with children, holidays, and the quiet comforts of a shared life. But as the months turned into years, a subtle, almost imperceptible shadow began to fall over their sunlit life. The happy, outgoing, witty Michael started to become more withdrawn, more insular. Cindy would later tell detectives a carefully curated story, claiming that he had started spending more and more time on his computer, retreating from her into the safe, orderly digital world he understood so well. She framed it as him losing interest in her, as a sign that their marriage was failing from within. "He doesn't love me anymore," she claimed he had said to her, a statement that conveniently painted her as the spurned, neglected wife. But his friends and family saw a different, more troubling picture. They saw a man reacting not to a lack of love, but to a growing, suffocating unease in his own home. The rumors about his wife and their pastor were impossible to ignore in a town as small and interconnected as Morris. For a man like Michael, who valued loyalty, honor, and privacy above all else, the affair was not just a private betrayal. It was a profound and searing public humiliation. He, a man who cherished logic and order, was trapped in a vortex of chaos, deceit, and whispers. According to Cindy's own mother, Judy, Michael's humiliation was curdling into something far darker, fear. In a hushed, desperate conversation, he had confessed his anxiety to his mother-in-law. "I am afraid of Jeff," he admitted, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. He believed Jeff Brown, the man who had baptized him, the man who was supposed to be his spiritual guide, was capable of hurting him. When Judy pressed him, asking if he thought Jeff might physically harm him, Michael's response was a chilling premonition. "Yeah," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I know he would if he got the opportunity." The man who was a rock for so many was standing on crumbling ground, the foundations of his life being eaten away by a cancer of deceit. He had tried, with a heartbreaking earnestness, to salvage his marriage. He had even taken Cindy back to Disney World, the magical, manufactured paradise that had been the site of their honeymoon for their 5th anniversary. It was a trip meant to rekindle the magic, to remind them of the love that had brought them together. But it likely felt more like a desperate, frantic attempt to patch the gaping holes in a sinking ship. The photos from that trip, which Cindy would later tell police she hadn't even had time to put in a frame, would become a haunting memento of a love that was already lost, a ghost of a happiness that could never be reclaimed. On the night of his murder, Michael Reese came home from a long day at work and stopped to pick up dinner from Milo's for himself and his wife. A simple, mundane act of domestic life, an ordinary gesture of love and partnership. He walked through the front door of his home, a place that should have been his sanctuary, his refuge from the world. He was unaware that he was not walking into a haven, but into a meticulously laid, brutally efficient trap. The life of the good husband, the kind soul, the steady friend, was about to be extinguished by a single, cold, and calculated act of violence, leaving behind only the howling, unanswerable question of why a man so loved could meet such a hateful, lonely end. Chapter 3. The Grieving Widow. Cindy Henderson Reese was a woman defined, in the public eye, by two great and devastating tragedies. The first, the shocking suicide of her young husband, cast a long, sympathetic shadow over her life, shaping her identity in the eyes of the community as a figure of profound sorrow and admirable resilience. The second, the brutal murder of her next husband, Michael, would redefine her completely, transforming her from a figure of pity into a subject of dark suspicion and, ultimately, a convicted killer. To understand her journey from beloved widow to reviled murderer is to trace the path of a woman who, whether by cruel misfortune or cold, calculating design, was always and irrevocably at the very center of a storm. Growing up in the Morris area, Cindy was known for her sweet, unassuming disposition and her one true passion, music. The church was both her stage and her sanctuary. Her natural talent at the piano and her clear, strong voice, which could fill a sanctuary with soaring notes of praise, made her the perfect, inevitable choice for the role of music director at Sardis Baptist. It was a position of immense respect, a role that placed her at the spiritual and social heart of the community, a visible symbol of faith and devotion. Her first marriage had been, by all outward appearances, a happy and conventional one. His sudden, violent death by his own hand was a profound shock to everyone who knew them, a tragedy that seemed to come from nowhere. It plunged Cindy into a deep and understandable depression. Her cousin, Delane Mullins, watched with a heavy